Hello and welcome in this interview. Today I'm very excited to have our guest because our guest is Phil Dawes. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
It's pronounced Dawes.
Oh, okay.
Dawes.
So in the French way, it's Phil Dawes.
Yeah.
And we are going to discuss about schools and the schools of today and the school of tomorrow. I present myself shortly. So I'm Christelle Pilot and I am coach for parents. I help parents to recapture freedom and to build a strong family, a resilient family. And that's why I decided to do this kind of interviews to give some tricks and to open up the minds as well as parents to see what we could do differently. And in this period is very important. So welcome, Phil.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Great to talk to you.
So you come from Canada, right?
Yeah, I live in Canada. I live in the province of Ontario. I'm right in between, I'll name 3 big Canadian cities, and I'm in a very small town of about 20,000 people, but it's, on the grand scheme of things, pretty much midpoint between Montreal to the east, Toronto to the west, and Ottawa to the north.
Okay.
Ottawa being our nation's capital. And I'm right down in on the St. Lawrence River in the Thousand Islands district. Very beautiful down here.
Yeah, I think so. So how is it right now in Canada? Do you still have lockdown and remote school?
Yeah, like every country in the world, Canada has had a very challenging time. In Ontario, we've been through now 3 waves of the pandemic. The first wave started about a year ago, January or February 2020. So there was lockdowns or shutdowns, and all of this has been done through, and we'll get into this, remote distance learning. So that was the first wave. Things got better, as it did, I think, worldwide in the summer last year. School boards prepared for a reopening. Many schools prepared for that, through organizing what they would call virtual schools. A few other schools have done it through what we would call hybrid synchronous learning through classrooms. So that was the preparation for wave 2, which did come in November, December. And now we're heavy into wave 3. And It's been very, very challenging and difficult for people. And I think people are tired. Yeah.
Exactly. We have the same feeling here in Germany. So people are tired, children are tired, teachers are tired, parents anyway. And what I really like in your title, it's like you really look at educational system for tomorrow and today. So what I would like to ask is how did you start? What do you think about that?
Sure. Yeah, you're right. I'm working now as an independent consultant. I'm calling myself an education consultant, but I've only been doing that for a year and a half. I retired August of 2019, and that followed a 31 years actually, career in education. And usually when I tell people that I worked in education, the first thing they ask me is, well, what did you teach? And the truth is, I wasn't an educator. I was an administrator. I don't know about in Germany. In Canada, we'll often call administrators school principals. I wasn't a school principal either. I was an administrator at the district level. Okay. So I was overseeing all of the different system applications that helped the systems that I was working for operate the way we wanted them to work. So that would involve a lot of things related to planning, communication, data applications, a lot of process work, working with communities, getting feedback on policy development and program development. A lot of the work that I did was applied to resource allocation strategies. But the work that I really liked doing was the work that I got to do with schools, school principals and school teachers, where I would work with them to help them with their information and data needs and process needs to help them develop their school and classroom improvement plans. That was the work that I loved. So when I finished up my career in education after 31 years, it's allowed me an opportunity to work more deeply on my side work. And this, I have to go back about 10 years on this. About 10 years ago, I started a blog site. And it was really just for myself because I needed a way to keep track of my ideas and my thinking as it related to the need for educational system transformation. And this really started for me about 10 years ago when I saw an animate based on a TED talk that was done by Ken Robinson. Are you familiar
Yes.
with Ken Robinson?
Yeah.
So you know the one that I'm talking about.
Yes.
And it was a game changer for me. And I had never really thought about the fact that our educational systems, organized from an industrial era perspective, are obviously having challenges now in allowing us to do the work that we all seem to think we need to do and agree on what we need to do. And so I'm seeing people work really, really hard to create more vibrant learning opportunities for kids that's in alignment with the new world order that we all live in, but trying to do that in an educational system structure that was never intended to do that.
Exactly.
And so I started writing blog posts, and they're all on my site. It's called Edushift, edushift.ca.
Okay,
And
I
if
will
you go
give
on
the
there,
link.
you can go back 10 years and see where I started with my thinking on this. And I've just been adding more and more posts as I go. So what's been really exciting about retirement and now being able to be an educational consultant is I'm allowing myself to devote my full attention and energy to this bigger idea around educational system training.
So you didn't, as you started, you didn't really think that you would come in this kind of area, this kind of period, right? So with the COVID and all this
Oh my
change.
goodness. Yeah, it's so relevant that you said that, because yeah, I only just started independent work a year and a half ago. The pandemic hit 6 months into this.
Right.
And so my immediate reaction was, well, my goodness, this should be a real opportunity for us to look more deeply at what we could learn from this to get closer to the system transformation that I keep hearing people want to do.
Exactly.
But really, what we've seen happened is it's raised all sorts of information or ideas or exposures about what the challenges of our current educational systems are. And I'm really quite worried at this point that we aren't thinking enough about how we could leverage this moment to really get to the change that we need to do, right?
Okay, so you have the impression that we do something right now, but we don't really understand we don't take the opportunity really to change everything, and then to be able to transform the system after. Because as you said before, we are going to have an after, but the after is not going to be exactly the same than before, right?
That's correct, yeah. I mean, we were talking about all of this stuff before the pandemic, right? I'm talking about people like Ken Robinson, who made that really valuable point about creativity and how creativity exists in all of us, right?
Exactly, yes.
And so how do we create educational systems that bring that out? Daniel Pink was another one who talked about in his book, and that book, what was that book called? Reshaping Minds? I might have got that wrong, but I think it was like 13 years old now.
Okay.
And talking about how our societies have changed. We started as society or world of farmers, agriculture, right? And then that transitioned to the industrial era. And then that transitioned to knowledge-based economies. And now we're in a position where we need people that know how to solve problems, right? Address problems through, again, creativity, the idea of creativity. And now we're even seeing it from large economic organizations like the World Economic Forum. That organization has a report that's only a year and a half old that says exactly the same thing. And then so that alignment now is being made from an economic perspective. So we were talking about all of this prior to the pandemic. And then the pandemic happened, and it could have been an opportunity to really test some of these larger ideas. But what's happened is, and I totally understand why it's happened, because we need to just keep some sort of sense of normalcy, but there is no more normal, you know? And so what's happened is we've seen our educational systems try to address the pandemic by maintaining a status quo operation. And that's been done through what we call remote learning. And so remote learning is really just an extension of what was happening before the pandemic hit in regular in-person classroom instruction. You know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah. And what kind of problem do you see? Because before the interviews, I told you that children are stressed out because they are not really used to learn this way, and teachers are stressed out because they really had time to adapt, and they are not used neither to learn this way. So right now, what I have seen that there is more children be in distress. There is teachers being completely burned out. So how to address that, how to change that? So we should have just stop everything and then create something new, which is not really possible, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. We can't stop. We have to keep going. I think it comes down to how do we think about what we're doing in terms of what we're trying to achieve in terms of a new direction in education. Maybe before I get to that, I could point out to you, I was really intrigued earlier this year from a research article that was done by the Asian Journal of Distance Education. I referenced this in one of my Edushift posts. It was a research study conducted with participation from 31 countries globally,
Okay.
asking educators, educational system leaders about what the challenges were coming out of remote learning. And it's important that we call it what it is, right? It's emergency remote learning. That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's a response to an emergency. And we're doing remote learning, which is really an extension in the home of children based on what was happening prior to that through regular classroom instruction. And so through this study, they found that there's an identified need for, and this was from feedback from 31 countries, a need for personalized learning opportunities for students, equity in education, openness through collaboration and sharing, digital literacy, appropriate uses of technology, and meaningful support for parents that addresses the gender gap.
Yeah.
So right out of the gates, you can see how that's a framework for what we're talking about in terms of what education needs to move to from a system perspective. Now, it's really important that you know, that I'm not criticizing or talking about the hard work that's happening from teachers or educators or parents right now. That's exactly the point. Everybody is working so very, very hard. And there are all sorts of innovations in education that we were talking about before the pandemic hit, okay? And in fact, I made a list of those just recently. This is interesting. I thought to myself, how many different terminologies could I come up with that relate to educational change and what's happening? So here's what I came up with. And you could probably think of some additional ones. Blended learning, experiential learning, project-based learning, STEM. Then there was STEAM with the A in there. Flipped learning, self-directed learning, online learning, e-learning, deep learning, competency-based learning, okay? That's just a start. What I'm saying, this is all happening. People are doing this incredible work with kids through these different isolated pockets of work, right? But what we need to do is acknowledge that the current educational system structures that we have in place do not make it easy for people to get the necessary support they need to do this type of work with kids, right? Yeah. We're still trying to do this work in isolated pockets based on system structures that were never intended to create that type of holistic opportunity for students to bring more of their own self-ownership into the learning process, right?
In Germany,
so that's what we're talking about.
In Germany, there is a few schools like the Waldorf school or something like that. They try to work with project. They try to work with the how the children are into the subject. So they really try to do that differently. So we have in Germany, we have different kind of system like that. In France, because I come from France, it's more the national educational school system. Not very flexible.
Yeah. I mean, so when we think about pandemic and remote learning, I'm quite sure that teachers are doing a lot of those different types of learning formats that I just listed. But do we really know who's doing what and how to build upon that really great experience that's happening to get to something a little deeper that I would call it holistic learning, perhaps, or more central to the idea of lifelong learning? You've probably heard, think leaders say things like, well, people are going to have a child born today can expect to have 50 different jobs in their lifetime, right? And this is why we need to create this idea of lifelong learning. How do people understand how to engage themselves for their entire lifetime on what they're going to have to learn to do continually, as opposed to simply getting a knowledge base on something right now that they'll graduate from, go to university, get the job, and then get a, have a career.
Yes, indeed. I completely agree. My husband asked me like 2-3 days ago, what kind of advice could we give our boys, because I have 3 boys, about the career choice they should do? And I told him, well, nothing. What I think is that they should know that they should do something with passion. They should learn and learn and learn again, and they should be creative, because creativity is creativity, self-confidence, and how to say that, perseverance. That the keys, and if they have that, they have everything. So I don't want to help them to find one profession, but I want them to, so it's really my goal. I want them to be passionate about something and to put the effort to go there, to be creative and perseverant. And I think then they can choose, they are going to change anyway. So I was engineer before, I am coach now. So
there you go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not saying anything new. Central to this is the idea that, again, our educational system structures were set up at a time, and they've been very good. I mean, that's why it's so hard to change, is because they worked very well at that time. They were designed for teachers to transfer knowledge to students, right? But we now need teachers to work with kids in a way where they're supporting them on their own learning journey based on things that they're interested in. And that can all be lined up with the curriculum. And so I would say, again, this is happening. We just need more systematic structures in place to get it deeper and further along, right? And so when I say holistic learning, I'm also talking about, so there's that aspect of the pedagogical side of it. But I think there's also an aspect to this on 2 main fronts: creating conditions for kids to get involved in real world situations, right? Like when you talk to young people today, they want to be involved in the issues that we're all dealing with: environmental issues, right? Equity issues, diversity issues. There's so many things that kids could be working together on that could make learning more relevant to them. And so how do we create the system structures that allows that to happen? We certainly have the capacity. We don't need to be thinking it so much anymore about schools and classrooms being defined by the building, or the room itself. Kids in their day-to-day lives are connecting with kids all over the world through gaming or whatever. But then we put them in school and we think that they have to work with the same 10 or 15 or 20 other kids in their classroom, right? So how do we create system structures that allow that to happen? I think I said previously, system structures that really allow for personalized professional development of teachers and support staff. And again, the whole idea around communication strategies. But there's another key aspect to this that I really think needs to be brought into the equation. And that is system structures that make more seamless connections between kids and community and outside service organizations that can help with the type of work that you're doing with coaching, mentoring, helping kids with mental health and anxiety issues, which are so rampant now.
Yes.
And, we can't be asking kids to learn when they have these significant mental health and anxiety issues. And there's so much, again, work being done right now to try to address that, but the system structures don't allow it to happen as easily as perhaps it could, right?
Yeah.
It's not easy work, but it could be easier if
And
there were
what's
better system structures in place.
another question I would have is what happened to the marks? So because it's really, so what's put a lot of pressure as well, and right now I can see that. So there is a lot of people being afraid that because the school is not performing the same way than before, they're afraid that the children, they don't learn anything,
Right.
and then the marks are not good anymore, or even if the marks are good, that it's not the same level anyway, and then it's they are wasting their time, their year, and maybe even their life just now. So everything it's happening right now. So what do you think about that?
This is a really tricky one. And I have 3 kids myself. And you want the best for your kids, right? And it comes down to how are we interpreting as adults what our kids need moving forward into a world that has changed so much in a very, very short period of time. And so as an adult and somebody that wasn't born into this new way of thinking about global communications and connectivity, are my values perhaps out of sync a bit with what's actually happening? All right. And so, in fact, Ken Robinson talked about this. The idea of what did he call it? Credential inflation. Did you ever hear that one?
No.
So the idea that it used to be that just going to university in and of itself would be a pretty good gateway to success in a knowledge-based economy, right? But now we're finding more and more that a university degree is perhaps worth, from a credentialing point of view, what a high school diploma used to offer, right? And so there's more and more competition to get into the elite university programs, thinking that that's going to be a gateway to success.
Exactly.
And at the same time, we have industry and business leaders telling people that want to listen, kids, families, that that's not necessarily what they're looking for. That again, what they're looking for are those capacities that we talked about earlier, right? What is my capacity as an individual to embrace change, to be able to identify problems and solve problems, to be able to communicate, to be able to collaborate, right? All in this world with all of these technical advances that are changing so fast and incrementally on a very rapid pace. And so our challenge as parents, I think, is wanting the best for our kids. Are we equating success in the right way, both in terms of what it means to us, what it means to our kids, but also as it relates to the new world order that we're all in, and what we can actually get from education that maybe we're not getting right now, because again, the system structures aren't in place to support that type of new vision.
I like this idea, so really to have a look at what we learned, or how it was our world 20 years ago, how it is now, and how it's going to be in the future, and just to take a little bit distance when we see that, and to think maybe what's going on right now, it's not so dramatically important regarding the marks and the children at school.
Yeah. I totally appreciate that there are probably a lot of parents that are not prepared yet to make that leap. And I totally get that. But I would also suggest that there's parents out there that are seeing education and success in a different view. And one of my awakenings in the last short while has been the unschooling movement, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's the wrong word, unschooling, by the way. But what they're keen on is the idea of self-directed learning, right? And so what does success equate to for a student that's working through a self-directed learning process and how they're going to equate happiness. And so, you know, having benchmarks that are based upon getting the marks and getting to the high profile university doesn't necessarily equate to happiness in life, right? And so I think we're seeing more and more parents grab onto that idea, and certainly more and more students who are just kind of disenfranchised with what's being offered to them through current educational structures. And I say again, not necessarily through the teachers or teachers that they're working with or support staff that they're working with, who are trying very hard to provide them what they want. Again, just the system structures that really are out of sync with the day-to-day lives they conduct outside of school.
I agree. To finish our interview, you told me about the 7 different skills and attributes to do online learning, and I found them very good. So could you tell them again here?
Sure. Thanks for this. On my site, edushift.ca. For anybody interested, you can go on there. There's an area specific to a tool that's available. We've called it the Student Online Readiness Tool. I'm not sure the word online is the right one, but nonetheless, anybody can go on there. I think we originally were thinking it would be for students probably aged between 10 and 13, but really anybody could try this. And it will walk you through the 7 skills and attributes that are necessary to be successful in online learning, or, you know, the type of learning that we're talking about, more open learning. And those 7 skills and attributes are, I always have to read them because I forget: perseverance, getting help, communication, planning and organization, time management, independent thinking, and technology. So again, this is free. You can just go on there, look for the sort on my site, edushift.ca, and you can walk through this. And at the end, if you're interested, you can run a PDF report. One of the key things I have to remind people with this, though, is it's not a test. This is very important. It's just simply a way for students to reflect upon what they're thinking in terms of their ability to do these things that we know are necessary for online learning. As it relates to what that you're doing, I think it would be very, very interesting and potentially valuable for parents, any adults, to go on there, try it themselves, and think about what this causes them to think about their interpretation of what education is and what the skills and attributes are as it relates to their experience, and also what they're seeing in their own kids, right? And how can you take these different skills and attributes that kids are being successful with already and build on those to build confidence going into next year.
I really like it because I have developed online course for children in order for them to be able to concentrate better with their homeschool homework. And there is a lot of stuff I can find that, so time management, ask for help, perseverance, and technology, not really, but time management as well. So I can find that again. So, and it's definitely what I really try to teach myself.
Yeah.
So it's exactly that. So planification, time management, perseverance. Yeah.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I mean, that's really my mantra. I really look at things from an inquiry approach. I'm always, when I talk to people, I have this tendency where I'll ask a question and I'm not really looking for an answer. I'm just so used to talking in a way where I frame things from an inquiry perspective. I'm always wondering, well, what does this cause us to ask, right? So I'm not looking to jump to solutions on things, just what does it cause us to ask? And I think if somebody went on and used the sword as an example to ask themselves questions, I think it's mission accomplished.
I agree with you. Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm going to, under the video, I'm going to give the link to your website and maybe to your LinkedIn profile, if it's okay for you.
Oh, great. Yeah, sure.
And for the people looking at this interview, if you have any questions, so you can then contact and ask questions. And if you are a
Please.
teacher, if you are in the school organization, here again, so you can maybe network, because I
Yes.
think it's the best way to change things and to have
Yes.
great idea to become true.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed this conversation. We're at a very interesting point in all of this. So yeah, let's keep the conversation going. It's great.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.